Hi, we're going to try something new today, and I'm going to be narrating this PowerPoint presentation using QuickTime Player. I hope you enjoy it. This will be one of the first times that we've tried this as a strategy, so please let me know what you think. I'm going to be providing you with an overview of assistive technology. But let's start with a little context. First, we know that our classrooms are getting more and more diverse. But with the passage of IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act in 1997, the legislature brought into sharper focus that not only were students with disabilities guaranteed access to a free and appropriate education as part of their civil rights, but that they were also supposed to access the general curriculum. Now that might seem like a discussion that didn't need to happen, but what has happened over time is that with the introduction of children with disabilities in the classroom starting in the mid-70s, over time a parallel track of education has occurred, and oftentimes the bridges between special education and general education have not been that fluid. And we've come to realize that some kids have been denied access to the general curriculum. So with this change in the law in '97, as well as some very specific statements made through education reform, most specifically No Child Left Behind, we're now at a place where we are saying that all students, including students with disabilities, must have access to and make progress in the general curriculum. Not special education curriculum, they're talking about the general curriculum, which is available to all students. Within that context, children with disabilities sometimes need additional, not only instructional support, but devices to gain access to the general curriculum and support their learning experience. These devices are legally called assistive technology, and they refer to any device that facilitates function for a person with a disability. Now, assistive technology refers to devices that span the ages. So from birth to grave, it is possible that somebody may be using some form of assistive technology. But when we were talking about children that are in the education system from kindergarten through 12th grade, what we're talking about are assistive technologies that support access to learning and access to education, and really nothing else. It's restricted to that type of assistive technology. Some of the assistive technologies look quite different. There's really quite a range of devices. On this slide, we're looking at a range of input and output devices. You have, instead of a mouse, you could have a trackball and a switch system. You probably know that your own mouse or the touchpad that you use on a computer has some way for you to move the mouse around the screen as well as click. So the combination of trackballs or mice, alternative mice tools, as well as switches are what will help somebody navigate a screen. There's also eye gaze technology, alternative keyboards, and something that we call refreshable braille, where as the computer reads the content, instead of a person using their fingers to scan across a brailled page, they hold their fingers in place and the braille dots pop up through this keyboard, and it almost looks like a cribbage board, and the braille moves underneath their fingers. So if you like, take a moment to explore some of the websites so that you can see some of the different tools that are available for the different trackballs and switches, the eye gaze technology, refreshable braille, and keyboards. You don't have to spend a lot of time there, but you might just take a peek to get a better handle on what some of these tools look like. I do want to reinforce that assistive technology really is any device, which means that it could be a low-tech, no-tech device, such as a pencil grip, going all the way up to very high-tech and more complicated devices. There are everyday tools that make up assistive technology. So post-it flags, large grip pens, large button calculators, anything that can help a person with a disability work more effectively, learn more effectively, bridge their disability in a way that makes sense. Post-it flags are something that you might see in any classroom, but for the student that has organizational issues, they could make a difference in their learning. For the student that has fine motor issues, it could make a difference in their ability to actually turn a page. So all of those things will work for all kids, but for kids that have deficits with executive function that are documented as a disability, they could make a big difference for their access to the curriculum. So again, what we're looking at when we're talking about assistive technology is low-tech to high-tech, even no-tech. The places that I like to go for my assistive technology purchases are Staples. I usually start in Staples because some of the no-tech strategies that they have there are really quite useful. Velcro and duct tape, also very common in hardware stores, are considered one of the more fundamental assistive technologies that are out there, as well as the most useful. Electronic stores like Radio Shack are also quite useful. They can identify some things that can be used. They probably weren't designed as assistive technology, but have been adapted for their use. We used a remote paging system from them for my son when he was in 3rd grade. That was helpful in replacing a tutor for him. The way they used it is that they put the pager in his classroom, and when he needed assistance, particularly to go to the bathroom with support, he would page another tutor who was in a classroom that didn't need a full-time tutor there, so they were able to leave when he needed them. And this particular strategy helped promote more independence for him, as well as ease some of the financial burden in the school. But the remote paging system that we used was very similar to the kind that you see in restaurants when they're paging you for your table. But there are other lower tech strategies on that. Probably more commonly seen as the remote doorbell, where the ringer can actually be moved around, but the pad itself is in one location. Or if you Velcro the ringer, then that can move as well as the so the button can be moving with an individual, and the ringer could be in another space. And sometimes these ringers can also be designed to vibrate. So these types of strategies are available in stores like Radio Shack and Home Depot. AbleData is a different resource. It has it is a resource that it has thousands and thousands of assistive technologies. It's one of those kind of places that if you're looking can be a little bit scary if you go in there for the first time, because it has so many choices. But for families and practitioners that are looking for devices and tools and ideas, there isn't a better resource available. Assistive technology also includes in its definition supports and services. And included in that definition is predictably the evaluation, that a student needs to be evaluated, the requirement that the school acquires the device, the requirement that the school maintains, repairs, and replaces the device as needed, and that there's a coordination of services around the device, and that there's also training, not only for the student, but for the family, the teacher, any of the other service providers included in making sure that the student has access to the general curriculum. And you might ask, who's eligible for assistive technology? and why. Well, IDEA, again, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that is the civil rights legislation providing access to the general curriculum for all students, including students with disabilities, establishes that students with disabilities are entitled to a free and appropriate education. And with that right becomes special education services and related services for free. They have to be absorbed by the schools. When this was first passed by the legislature, they had offered states a much higher reimbursement rate than is currently available. But it is something that is supposed to be absorbed by the school districts. That issue, of course, is becoming more and more controversial, particularly during these difficult times. Services for students are supposed to be provided within the least restrictive environment possible, which means that the least restrictive environment would be a fully inclusive classroom setting. The most restrictive would be a segregated, most likely a hospital setting. So that's quite a continuum that is viewed for children. And the trick is to decide what level of service that they need and making sure that they are afforded greatest access as possible. So you could go from a general education classroom. The next step up might be general education with push-in supports. Next step up might be general ed with some pull-out. So you can see how this dance slowly shifts. Parents have significant protections, as do children, in this process. They're supposed to be involved in the decision-making process related to the evaluation and the assessment and the placement of their children. And when their children turn 14, their children are also supposed to be involved in the decision-making process. Some families and schools encourage participation earlier, but and then by age 16, kids are the drivers. They get to make those decisions unless their family are legal guardians for them. And then finally, assistive technology is one of those tools that a decision has to be made whether assistive technology would help provide access. In some instances, it's extremely obvious. A student with cerebral palsy may need a wheelchair. A student with a vision impairment may need Braille services and other technologies. A student with a hearing impairment needs a hearing aid or voice amplification systems. But in all of these instances, it is possible for that to happen. So let's take a look at the relevant laws here. Some of these laws include IDEA, which we've already talked about, and then Section 504 and Section 508. These are both part of the Rehabilitation Act. Then there's the American with Disabilities Act, and then there's the Tech Act, which focuses specifically on assistive technology. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these laws and why they're relevant right now. As we already mentioned, one of the bigger shifts in IDEA in 97 was to encourage that all students have access to and make progress in the general curriculum. The other piece that's important for our purposes is that during the IEP process, the teams consider whether assistive technology, device, and services would be useful to a student. I also want to take a look at, in this week's content, you'll find a handout from Judy Sweeney on an assistive technology continuum, which walks you through a visual that talks about low to high tech, as well as the types of environments that you might consider and tasks. Just thinking more strategically about the different multifaceted use of assistive technology. Also in that section, Judy has done a really nice job of providing an assistive technology table of laws, so that not only are these bigger laws in place, but there have been different letters from the Office of Civil Rights as well as the Office of Special Education supporting and refining the definitions and the regulations about assistive technology and its use. So I would encourage you to take a closer look at that. I think you'll find it interesting. The other thing that's kind of interesting and is a major part of this course is that IDEA defines universal design. This is the first time that the term universal design appears in the legislation, in any legislation. And universal design in this instance is referring to a concept about design within the built environment. It relates specifically to products and services, where they're suggesting how can we design products to support the broadest range of users possible. And if that is not possible, then how can we ensure that those products and services actually can accommodate the use of assistive technology, that there's some level of interoperability. This particular discussion is further amplified in Section 508, which we're going to be getting to in a moment. In the most recent reauthorization of IDEA in 2004, they further discussed the need for access to the general curriculum. We're getting much more focus on that, also including that children participate in high-stakes assessment. The other critical component of that regulation was the introduction of a national file format. The acronym is NIMAS, and it's one of those things that not many schools know about. They practice it in some way, but they don't know that much about it. And there's another slide on this in just a few. IDEA also introduced, in 2004, also introduced Response to Intervention, or RTI, which may be happening in your state. It's been picking up speed in different pockets of the United States since 2004. So NIMAS is a kind of a complicated conversation, but in a very, very brief overview, it refers to a digital format. We're talking about what happens when a publisher creates a textbook. And publishers in 2004 agreed that with every print textbook that they created, starting in December of 2006, that they would create a book, they would create a copy of it in a digital format that followed this standard. So NIMAS stands for National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard. There will not be a test on this acronym, so don't worry about that. But we will be looking very closely at what is the implication of having a digital copy of a textbook available. The other piece that NIMAS did was that they basically said that all kids need timely access to content in alternative format. And for those of you that are familiar with this, you may know that at the beginning of the school year, kids that needed their book in an audio format, in a braille format, large print format, or even in a digital format, they would have to wait months before it was available. Definitely were not getting their content when their peers were. So the focus of this law was to come up with a national file format from the publishers that could then be easily converted to these alternative formats in a timely manner. So more later. I hope you're excited to learn more about this. Response to intervention is a tiered method of determining specific learning disability, and one of the interesting reasons for this was that when students were being diagnosed with learning disabilities, oftentimes the discrepancy model was used. But what we have found over time is, first of all, the discrepancy model automatically requires that children, there's a discrepancy between performance and their capability. So in order to even launch the discrepancy model, you had to see this discrepancy, which meant that they were failing. And this was really not a positive approach. It was a very reactive approach to supporting children. So And additionally, what we found was that that using the discrepancy model did not always clearly determine that there was a learning disability in play. It could also signal that a child had a lack of opportunity to learn. So in some instances, if a child had a teacher who was not fully conversant in teaching reading, if this happened to a child more than 1 or 2 years in a row, this could put them on a path of underperforming. And this didn't signal that they didn't know how to read, but they were failing. And this often triggered special education supports and services, when in fact really what they needed was a classic opportunity to learn with somebody who knew how to teach them what they needed to know. So response to intervention is really set up for schools to monitor where kids are at more frequently, and to provide them with research-based interventions before they end up in special education. It doesn't preclude kids from becoming part of special education, but it tries to see whether good instructional practice can help them as opposed to fully moving into special education. We'll see a little bit more about this as the course progresses, but I want to point out to you that in the articles module, you'll find a folder on disproportionality and RTI, and I would encourage you to go check out some of the articles if you're interested in this. This is also something that's particularly useful to think about for English language learners, and making sure that schools do not place children in special education when in fact what they're dealing with is a language acquisition issue. 504 and ADA play out in schools in very similar ways. These are protections to ensure programmatic access, and that the accommodations are often exclusively administered within the context of general education. An evidence of a disability is required, but it could also be a temporary disability. So you may find that a student that had a skiing accident and broke their arm may need a double set of books, which would be a common 504 accommodation. Double set of books would also be a common 504 accommodation for a student who had low muscle tone and was fully capable and cognitively capable to be in school and be in a regular classroom, but was unable to meet some of the physical demands of getting around a building and carrying a lot of texts. 504 plans today often see a lot of medically involved issues. Children who need medication, need to have their blood sugars monitored, and things like that. So 504 is something that is really quite common, but often not administered in special education. And Section 508 is really pretty wonderful law. It refers to the federal government. It's a procurement law related to technology. So if you should sell something to the feds, like a web page, software, a computer, it has to meet some accessibility guidelines. It's these accessibility guidelines that they've created that have promoted web accessibility, as well as the development of products that are more universally designed. I think right now the leader in that, at least from a public perspective, could be Apple Computer. They've really made some significant headway in that area. So this is a very quick overview of assistive technology. There are a few links at the end of this if you want to take a quick peek. Feel free to, but it is not a requirement. What you might want to take a look at is the glossary of terms. This glossary of terms will bring you to a database of well, let me fix that link. Will bring you to a database of tools that are organized by themes. So you will see some input devices listed under keyboards, and you'll see some devices listed under voice recognition or text-to-speech. This link will be fixed by the time I post this, but I'm not going to redo the video. Hope you don't mind. Thanks so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. We'll have a brief discussion area for you to talk about your impressions about assistive technology. This is just the tip of the iceberg, not to overwhelm you, but just to set the tone for the fact that assistive technology is really designed to help promote students and provide them access to the general curriculum. And it does have some legal underpinnings, as you noticed. It is required in the IEP process, and assistive technology can be quite broad, from low-tech to high-tech, no-tech, low cost to high-tech, high cost. And it is something that can be found in many, many places, not just in an assistive technology store. So, more later. Thank you so much. Take care.